All right, we've started. So just to repeat, uh tonight we're just looking at setting our intentions as a writer, reading like a writer, kind of what the beginnings look like. And I'm just gonna set a timer for 15 minutes, and me and my buddy Adrian, we're just gonna talk about this. And to give you a little context, and Adrian, you might be better at this than me, but we this is my first time doing NaNoWriMo. How many times have you done it?
Three or four.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So he's kind of taken me under his wing in terms of the NaNoWriMo parts. Both of us have written novels. Um, but I don't know. I just as I thought about it, I was like, let's have conversations while we're doing it. So we're just gonna be meeting for the next couple of weeks, and I guess the next couple of months. And the goal here, big picture for what the reason we're recording this stuff is we just kind of wanted to tell the story. I think of our friendship, but also of like what does it look like to start a project like a novel? What does it look like to work on the novel? And then what does it look like to bring it to what does publication look like? Um, so that's kind of the goal over the course of the next 3 months. That seems crazy to me. That seems really crazy to me.
That's
So
because you're right at the beginning.
yeah, and that I don't know, honestly, that in terms of like the beginner's mindset and like kind of where I want to live while I'm working, I feel like being scared of a project is like a good sign at the beginning. Um, like feeling like I can't do that. Um, I don't know, for me that kind of sets the bar where it needs to be. Um,
What do you think? What would you be nervous about if you weren't scared? Like, what would that be a signal of?
if I wasn't scared, that honestly that the project didn't have legs, that like that I would get into it. There's been times where I've been really excited about something and I start writing it and then I get to like the swamp, I get to like the middle point on it and it's just like I realize, oh my gosh, it doesn't have legs. Like there's not enough here to sustain a novel. Um and so like I feel like if I'm scared, it's because for me, like being more or less a five on the Enneagram, where like I covet, like I want more information, I want more knowledge. The scared feeling is like I don't know enough about this, and I don't feel adequate to this project. Um, and that's actually good, a good place to begin because um, there's a lot that I'm gonna learn along the way, and I'm prepared. Like I'm prepared to learn it because I feel scared because I want, you know what I mean? I'm motivated to learn it. And it's a complex enough thing that when I get to the swamp, there'll be stuff to get it through the swamp, to get it through the when I mean by the swamp, I mean that part in the middle part of writing where you start to bog down.
Yeah.
Um, that's a good
So
question.
the fear to you is a signal of like adequate motivation.
I think it's adequate motivation, yeah. And then I think it's also this, I think it's a healthy thing to be like, I feel um inadequate to this task. Like I think there's like humility there. Like I mean, because at the end of the day, I remember one time I was talking to a surgeon. I work at a hospital, and I was talking to a surgeon who reads a lot. And we would swap book ideas and stuff. And this surgeon in the middle of an operation was just like, I would give up everything if I could write a book. And I was like, man, you do surgery all the time. Like, what are you talking about? That's pretty amazing. Like, you're putting this person back together. And he's like, yeah, but to write a novel, that would really be something. And he seemed really kind of frustrated about it. It was a weird moment, but it just kind of gelled with me that like this thing that we say we're gonna do in a month is really difficult. And I mean, I think it's appropriate. Just like if I would want to feel jitters before I try to take out someone's appendix. You know, wouldn't you
Sure.
want
Yeah.
your surgeon to be a little uncomfortable before they take out your appendix? You know,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
guess
know.
nobody dies if you screw up writing your novel, though. Or
But do
maybe
they?
they
I
do.
mean,
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing. It's like
I guess in a sense that is an open question. Um, I think something dies. So
Yeah, I mean, like think about I'm trying to think of a good example of a book that like kind of changed the tide of way like the way people think. And this is not a great example. You hate this book, and I'm not a big fan of it either. But Uncle Tom's Cabin, like
mm,
if that book hadn't been written, it greatly changed public sentiment around a key social justice issue, right? And it created
for sure.
characters that at that time were real and believable. The book is clearly flawed, and it's doesn't survive the test of time very well, but it, you know what I mean? Like would it, my hope is that in writing that I don't think all art needs to like have some political message, and in fact most of it probably shouldn't, um but I do think it's important, you know.
Yeah,
I think it's
it's an
important.
example of that there are consequences. Sometimes the consequences are kind of external and social and large
Mhm.
scale, and but even if they're smaller and more personal, they're still consequences. So
So let me ask you this, like do you have an idea? Do you know what you want to write next
yeah,
month?
I do. Yeah, I'm gonna write a story that I've been telling myself in my head for quite a while. So I have it pretty tight, at least in the on kind of the surface plot. I want to do a couple of kind of ambitious things with it with subplots. So I am going to
Okay.
be kind of in the weeds at a certain point, but the basic arc of the story is really solid in my head.
So this is something you've kind of worked and reworked and kind of had it. How long would you say you've had it in your head?
Well, in one form or another for a couple of years, 2 years. But that's pretty normal for me. I always have kind of 5 or 6 ideas that I really like, and I kind of work them for a while in my head before I ever try to write them, which is fine because I've got other things that I'm actually working on at the time, you know. But by the time it's time to choose a new project and actually start writing something, I've been telling myself that story for a while already. So I've got something to work with, you know.
That's good. That's really good. I think this will be a good kind of A/B test. I'm glad that you're doing something that you have worked and reworked in your head. Um, I've had this idea of all, so the thing that I want to do something that's like a lit RPG. Have you read any lit RPG?
No, but I'm aware. I know the basic idea of what it is. It's kind of like a game, right? It's like a
Yeah,
kind of a book and a game hybrid at the same time.
yeah, it's books that are like pulling from games and gaming culture. I think probably the
But you
best.
actually play it, right? Am I understanding it
Mm-mm.
right?
No, you read it instead
Okay,
of play. It's
you
like the
don't
book
actually
that you
play
read
it
instead of playing a game.
instead of playing. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not what I thought it was. I thought it
it was
was
a
a
foreign
game.
concept to me.
Mm,
But I read one. I read this book called Dungeon Crawler Carl. Um, this book is not going to change society and has no pretensions to that it will. Um, it's very. I found it very enjoyable. Incredibly offensive, but very enjoyable. Um, but I feel so. The reason I'm mentioning that is this is not an idea. So I've had the general idea that I've always wanted to write like a book about a video game. But the idea that I've come up with, I literally just came up with this morning. Like, and
okay.
I don't know where it's going to take me. Um, but the one thing that I do feel good about is like it it makes me feel really nervous. Um, so that's like pretty much all I got. So I think that's a good A/B test. Is like because I've written books the way you're talking about too, like where I have a solid idea, I've worked it and reworked it and reworked it in my mind. Um, but I've also kind of launched out and tried to do this one. I think they're both reasonable approaches, you know. Um, and it's like just like Mike Tyson says, like everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, which I feel like November at one point in time, at least once or twice, we're both gonna kind of be feeling, well, we'll have that punched in the mouth feeling, you know.
Yeah, and all, like keep in mind the point of November is not to write like a good novel. It's just to get a draft. That it's just to get a draft. You're
So,
gonna
all right,
work
you
on
tell
it.
me your philosophy of November because I've been totally freaking myself out with this
Yeah, no,
NaNoWriBros.
you're not trying to have anything that you would want anyone else to read by the end.
That's
I mean,
encouraging to
we're gonna
know.
write fat, like we're gonna write if you actually do the whole thing out, you're gonna write 50,000 words in 30 days. That's so though not all I mean, every time I've won, they say won, it just means that you actually wrote
You're
50,000
like a
words.
marathon finisher. You finish. You're a finisher.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
every time I've done it, I've done the 50,000 words. But I bet 15 to 20,000 of those were actually worth writing.
Yeah.
But the point is to get a draft, and now you're gonna like work on that draft and turn it into something that you're not ashamed of, you
I'm
know?
reminded of I was reading just today about the etymology of the word agony.
uh,
It comes from like agonos, I think. It's a Greek word, and it refers to initially it referred to people in sporting events like in ancient Greece. I mean, I think it's possible some of these sporting events were pretty high stakes, like maybe they were used to solve like political disputes, but the people in these sporting events would be literally like beaten to like black and blue. Like they would be bloody and beaten by these wrestling events or by whatever these sporting events were. And they used the word agonos to describe the pitting of these combatants against each other. So they weren't going to die from their wounds, but they were going to be hurting really really bad for a long time from their wounds. Um, and then I guess gradually over time the the word morphed from there. Um, but yeah, I feel like that
Yeah,
is
that's not a bad analogy. That's
yeah.
maybe the really long time is a bit like I don't think you're going to be hurting for a really long time because of this, but it is uncomfortable and painful at times.
Yeah, and I feel like I want to talk a little bit about strategy on that real quick because, like I said, I've been psyching myself out on this. So it's 50,000 words, I think, and I did the math, and it's like I'm going to be taking Sundays off.
So that's a
Um,
good thing to do. Like figure out the days that you're actually going to write and figure
and
out
we've
what
got
your
like
word count needs to be.
freaking Thanksgiving in there.
Yeah.
That's just
But
brutal.
I'll write on Thanksgiving. I'm not going to write 2,000 words or whatever the kind of daily average is. I think it's like 2,100 words a day is what it breaks down to.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that
that's what
on
I got.
Thanksgiving.
21 a day.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that on Thanksgiving, but and I'm not going to. There's going to be several days where I don't do that, but that just means I need to have some days where I do more than that. You know.
I've been winding down a project, winding down a novel as I've been kind of thinking about this. And there's been days recently where it's like I'm lucky if I get 100 words because it's like it's closing and it's like I'm tying up all the loose ends. And um, I feel like when you first come out of the gate, there's this sense of like urgency, and you can get a lot of words on the paper, and you can kind of keep that pace for a while sometimes. But I started doing the uh, is it Brian Sanderson? What's his name? The big
Brandon, Brandon
Brandon
Sanderson.
Sanderson.
Yeah.
He has this thing somewhere where he talks about keeping a spreadsheet of like what his daily word count is, and he shoots for
Mm,
2,000 a day. Like that's what he does. I mean, the guy's it's he's just like he's a beast like that. I mean, like Stephen King's like
yeah.
that. Um,
Well, and he has all day to write. He doesn't have to
well,
do
and
other
he does a
things.
weird thing. Like I've tried it, I didn't like it, but I think it's almost necessary. So he tries to average over 250 words an hour, like close to 500 words an hour. So he does 4 hour shifts.
Yeah.
Um, basically, he does one. He wakes up at like 10 in the morning, and he does one from like 10 until 2, and then he picks his kids up from school. I think he's I get Mormon vibes from him, and I'm saying this with love, but like he does the family thing until like 8 at night after the kids are in bed. Then he stays up until like 2 in the morning and gets another 4 hour shift in of writing 1,000 words in like 4 hours. and then he checks emails or plays a video game until he just passes out and does it again. I mean, that's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I tried it out and I was just like, I don't this is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I can't do that. I mean, I could do it for 30 days, but I couldn't do that like all the time.
The night thing is like, so that's the timer. Um well, yeah, I think that's good for tonight. Like, we'll just keep this conversation going. Um and I mean, the whole idea here is just to have some touch point to keep us both sane through this process. Um Next time we get together, I was thinking about character theory. And the one thing that we haven't talked about is the ideal reader and what it means to read like a writer. So we may need to put that into a separate session.
Mm,
Because I think it's really vital to imagine like the ideal reader, like to put myself in like who's gonna read this.
yeah.
Um even
What
if
do
the
you,
ideal reader is me, you know what I mean? Like even if the ideal reader is like one person,
someone
um
that likes the stuff I like?
yeah, that's
That's, that's, I
I
guess
mean, you
that's
don't have to
usually
get
kind of
bogged
my
down in the
ideal reader.
demographics, but like I think we do
Mhm.
need to what we do is in service to the reader. And so I feel like we've done a good job talking about setting intentions, but um ideal reader. We'll talk about ideal reader Thursday. All right, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
Night.